Okay, inshallah, let's get started, everybody. Welcome to the third session. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum to everybody. I hope you guys are all doing well. I hope you had a good break, enjoyed your winter holidays, however you spent it, inshallah. My voice is coming through okay, right? Give me a thumbs up if everything is clear and
Alhamdulillah, thank you.
alhamdulillah. Good, good, good. Okay, so as always, please do feel free to participate. I will try to engage you guys at some point, but I will get started in the meantime. So I'll start off with a story today, inshallah, get us slowly back into the mood of studying. This is a beautiful story and it's very much related to our discussion. We were talking about dreams, and dreams, as we will see, is really a kind of important way for us to come to realize that there is a world beyond the physical material world. Okay, so there's a story about a poet. This is a picture of him with Ayatollah Khamenei. His name was Sayyid Muhammad Hussein Shahriyar. He was a poet from Tabriz, from the Turkish speaking, Azeri speaking area in Iran, a pious Sayyid, famous poet. One night, Ayatollah Marashi Najafi, there's video clips of his son narrating this story. Okay, so Ayatollah Marashi Najafi was a great marja, a great pious scholar. He had been doing a'mal. We have certain a'mal in our books of hadith, books of a'mal, to get the opportunity to see one of the great personalities in a dream. Okay, so we have like a'mal that you can do to see one of the awliya of Allah in a dream. So Ayatollah Marashi Najafi had been doing these amal, hoping to see somebody in his dream. And one night, it was like a Thursday night apparently, and late at night he falls asleep and he sees himself in Masjid Kufa. And he sees Amir al-Mu'mineen, peace be upon him, in his dream. And Amir al-Mu'mineen, in his dream, calls for the poets to come in front of him. And Arab poets are brought. And then Imam Ali is looking for somebody. He says, no, bring the Iranian poets. The Iranian poets are brought. He's still looking for somebody. He says, no, bring Shahriyar. And then in the dream, Ayatollah Marashi Najafi watches that this individual Shahriyar comes in front of Imam Ali alayhi salam and recites a poem. I'll just maybe mention a few of the lines. The poem, when this poem was written, by the way, very quickly in Iran, it became very famous. Both the content of it and the style of it are very, very unique. It says, Ali ای همای رحمت تو چه آیتی خدا را که به ما سوا فکندی همه سایه هما را. Huma in Persian is like a mythical bird that represents greatness, represents some good kind of good qualities, maybe happiness, success. So the poem says in the first line of it that Ali, oh the Huma of mercy, this bird, what a sign, what an outstanding sign of Allah you are, that you have cast your Huma. Here, Huma in this part means maybe mercy or happiness or some kind of good quality. You have cast it on everybody else. Then the second line, Dil agar khuda shanasi hame dar rukhe Ali bin. به علی شناختم من به خدا قسم خدا را. That, oh heart, if you want to know God, then look at the face of Ali. That I swear by God, basically, I have come to know God through Ali. The poem goes on, it's a very beautiful poem. It talks about how Imam Ali is merciful to Ibn Muljim. It talks about Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Basically, the story goes like this, that Ayatollah Marashi Najafi wakes up and he's wondering who was this person, who is Shahriyar. He starts to investigate. He finds out that there is a famous poet in Iran who lives in Tabriz. His name is Shahriyar. He invites him to the city of Qum and he tells him about this dream. And Shahriyar is shocked. He said that I didn't tell anybody. That same night I was writing this poem and I had not told this story, I had not told this poem to anybody. So, this is an example of a true dream. It's an example of what exactly, like, basically it's an example of how dreams can convey a true message. And as we're going to see, this is going to be one of our proofs. In fact, we'll kind of use it in two of our different proofs that we want to go through for proving, inshallah, our topic right now is now proving the immaterial nature of the soul. And so inshallah you'll see that we are going to use dreams, inshallah. Before I give a, yeah, okay, let me just actually, before, since I mentioned this, let me just now quickly, I don't have a slide about this. Let me quickly run through six different proofs that we're going to go through, inshallah. Then what I'll do is I will recap what we did before the winter break, and then we will delve into the first proof for today, inshallah. So the overview of six different proofs that we want to go through. The first one that we're going to talk about today is this idea that the human being exists at different levels. If we introspect, if we go into ourselves, we think about knowledge, different types of knowledge and dreams and things like that, we begin to realize that we have things within us that are not physical, are not material. Okay, so when we realize that we are a being, our physical body is physical material, but there are aspects to us that are beyond that. That's the first proof that we will go through today. The second proof that also we might come to today is the idea of real dreams. Now, even in the first proof, we're going to mention dreams, but in the first proof, we're looking at it more as an example of analyzing this, the reality of what a dream is, that a dream is in another world, and so therefore we exist in another world. That's all part of the first proof that we'll go through today. The second proof is just simply statistics that a lot of people have had stories, and there are lots of accounts of people who had true dreams where they talk to the deceased, for example. That's going to be the second proof. That's going to be a very quick, brief proof. It's not going to take long. Next session, inshallah, proof number three and four are again going to be a little bit difficult philosophical proofs where we're going to talk about the reality of time and how physical beings, the third proof of ours, is going to be that a physical material being is limited in time, is always within this idea of time. And then the following proof is going to be that similarly, physical beings are, they have this idea of space. They take up space and have a side on the right side, a side on the left side, and in your mind, you can divide it up further. Certain qualities, basically, both of these proofs are going to be a bit of a philosophical analysis of properties of material beings. And then in both of those proofs, we're going to go back to our own understanding of ourself, our identity of who we are, and we will see that definitely we are something stable that's not changing over time. There is a dimension to us that does not change over time. There is a dimension to us that is not within space. Inshallah, we'll talk about that next week, but these will then be two other proofs that illustrate that we are not a physical material being. The last two proofs, again, very, very interesting. One of them is near-death experiences. There are lots of accounts from Muslims and non-Muslims of people who were at the verge of death. Maybe for a few minutes, their heart stopped beating, and then they came to life again. And they had amazing accounts. Okay, there's a TV show in Iran called Zindagi Pasas Zindagi, where they go out of their way to find such people and interview them. And they say that, okay, when I was dying, I could see my whole life in front of me, and then I came back to life again. Amazing things. We'll look at some of that. The last one are ahadith and verses of the Quran and accounts of mystics, that these are also evidence that we are. The Quran clearly says that, for example, at the time of death, the angel of death takes our soul. What does that mean? Takes our soul, but our body is dead. Right? So all of these constitute six different proofs that, inshallah, over the next 2 to 3 sessions, we will go through all of these proofs, inshallah. This slide over here shows an overview of the content of the course. The thing that's underlined is what I just mentioned right now. These six proofs of my body versus the reality of what I am. And that is the bulk of the course. Okay, so the three topics that are there afterwards, we will probably cover it very quickly, maybe in one, maximum two sessions. The bulk of what we want to look at, inshallah, over the next four sessions that we have is this topic that I just mentioned, my body versus I, over six different proofs, inshallah. A quick recap in the previous two sessions, we set the grounds for this by talking about how, you know, regardless of the soul, the Islamic perspective is that there are different worlds, there are hidden worlds, and these hidden worlds are of different levels and different types. The greatest of all the immaterial beings is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in a sense, in the words of religion, we are from Allah. We have journeyed from Allah down to this physical world, and we are journeying back to God. Okay, so there is this idea that the other worlds encompass, they are higher, and they are somehow encompassing this lower physical world that we are in. We talked about the idea of how stories like the story of Prophet Adam can be understood in this regard, that when Adam was placed on earth, his journey was a journey that all of us, in fact, went through, where we were existing at higher realms, and then we somehow have come down to this lower realm. Even the concept of alam al-dhar that's there in the Quran, that is a very confusing, kind of hard topic to understand, and previous Shia scholars quickly rejected it, whereas later generations of Shia scholars said, no, this is in line with the intellect. These concepts that are mentioned in Hadith can be explained in this concept, in this way, that we have these higher realms that we existed in before we were in this world. And in those higher realms, in some form that we all took a covenant with God. Whatever that means, there was some concept of us somehow agreeing to worship Allah and believe in Allah. Okay, I'll pause here. If anybody has any questions or comments before we get started, inshallah, we now want to, like I said, delve into the first of six different proofs for the. What are we proving? We're proving that our reality of who we are is not just this physical body that we can touch and see. We have a soul, we have an immaterial reality. Inshallah, we're going to try to answer the materialistic, non-Muslim perspective here. We'll come to that. We'll take a break at some time in today's course and today's lesson and try to answer this, that but can we not, like the way the non-Muslims, the way the materialists look at things is that everything is the brain. All of our perceptions, all of our dreams, all of our experiences can be explained as hormones and, I don't know, proteins and neurons that are firing off in our brain. So we'll try to answer that and say, no, that's not a sufficient explanation, inshallah. Okay, if there's no questions, we start with, first of all, defining some terminology. This is going to be important. The word material is of importance. Okay, so like I had said in previous classes, we're talking about three different levels. Okay, in the next kind of slide, I'll come to these three levels. But basically, one way we can start off by dividing it is the physical material dunya that we are normally thinking about and focused on. That is the material world, or another word, that is the corporeal body that we have. Okay? The Arabic word or the Persian philosophical terminology for this would be maddi, madda. Now, these terms are used differently in philosophy and physics. When they say matter, madda means matter. In physics, matter is something that is either an air or a gas or liquid or solid, one of these three states. Overall, philosophy means something totally different. And, we don't need to delve into it. There are differences of opinion, but when we use this term in philosophy, we're referring to this something that exists only in this world, this physical, lower material world that we will talk about a little bit right now. Okay, as opposed to that, the other worlds, which we are going to then divide into two, would all be called immaterial, mujarrad. Now, the word mujarrad is also confusing. Maybe sometimes that's why terminology can be confusing. It might sometimes be used to only refer to the highest realm from these three, because there is a middle realm where we're not talking about the physical material world, but it's like the dream world, the world where you still have shapes and forms, even though it's immaterial. Okay, so sometimes mujarrad might be used to encompass the second and third level, whereas sometimes mujarrad might be used to just refer to the third level. Okay. Some more terminology here. I had introduced this in previous sessions. Again, these slides that we're going to be looking at today are going to constantly use the word prototype. The Arabic word is mithal, alamul mithal, alam mithal. That is that middle level. We're going to give examples of it. We're going to explain it. It's this idea of it's not in the physical world, it's not in the material world, but it still has shapes and forms and colors, bodies. So there are bodies, but not corporeal bodies, not material bodies. That's in the middle one. That's called alam mithal in philosophy. And the translation we're going to go with here today is the world of prototypes. And then there is this highest level that is totally mujarrad. Okay, it's like there's no longer any body at all. It's existence, it's reality. We shouldn't think that, oh, if there's no body, then that's infinite, that's God. No, no, there's this idea of existence, even different beings that exist at that level that are not God. They are limited, but they don't have a form. They don't have a shape. They don't have a body. Okay? Okay, these are the three forms. Now let's go into it in a little bit of detail and try to show that we exist at every one of these levels. And in the process, we will also explain some Islamic concepts and ahadith, and I think some ahadith will come up as well. The overall argument that I already mentioned, just again to reiterate, after somehow trying to show that we exist at every one of these levels, then the conclusion will be very obvious that our physical body doesn't exist at all these three levels. Our physical body is only at the material level, the dunya. Therefore, the reality of who we are is something beyond. At least we have an aspect, a dimension to us that is beyond the physical, material dunya. Okay, these are the three levels again. I just explained them, so I don't need to explain them again. But basically, you can look at this that um, at the top we have the dunya, where we have a corporeal body, the world of matter. Then in the middle we have the mithal, or the world of prototypes, where there's still a body, but there's no matter. Okay, and then there is the aql, alam aql, the level of no body, no matter. Just one side point that this discussion is really important to somehow set the stage for future discussions in Islamic beliefs. It helps us to kind of understand God that we would talk about in future courses. It helps us to understand the level of the awliya of Allah, the prophets and the imams, to somehow open our mind to this idea of immaterial realities is an initial stage to understanding Islamic beliefs. Okay, we now start with a few more points about each one of these realms, each one of these worlds. We start with the dunya, the world of matter. One interesting thing to know, okay, so we normally, human beings, we live our life immersed in the world of matter, in the dunya. We look at things, we consider that by default, most people would consider that to be the only reality. Like I was saying, like even dreams and everything, people will try to explain it away as a physical phenomenon. Okay, because That's the kind of default. We're so from our childhood, we are just immersed in the physical world. But one interesting point that is relevant here is that the Islamic perspective that we're trying to prove is saying that we use the body, we use the five senses to take in perception that our soul is perceiving. Okay, I'm somehow getting ahead of myself that we haven't yet proven the soul, but just bear with me. That the Islamic perspective, the philosophical perspective is saying that when you see, when you eat, when you smell, when you hear, it is your soul that is doing all of these things. And the window into the soul is the physical body, the five senses. And that is a very important concept to appreciate because then that explains how, for example, spiritual unveiling, mukashifat, wahi, things that then belong to other worlds that we're not going to talk about, even those other worlds have the ability where your soul can open a window into the other world and receive reality, interact with other souls, receive knowledge, for example, into your soul. Okay, so for example, in the Holy Quran, when we have that story of Bibi Maryam, peace be upon her, and angel Jibra'il coming to her. The Quran says, فَتَمَثَّلَ لَهَا بَشَرًا Basharun or Basharan Sawiya? I think Basharan Sawiya. That angel Jibra'il was made to appear for her. تَمَثَّلَ لَهَا, for her only. The idea, the explanation, the philosophical explanation here is that if somebody was beside Bibi Maryam, they wouldn't have seen anything. Angel Jibra'il is not a physical being that was there in the physical world. Her soul, somehow, she had opened her window to those other worlds, and Jibra'il, who is an immaterial being, was shown to her. And that same soul that me and you, we use the physical world and we use our senses to take in input into our soul. Bibi Maryam was using another kind of window into another world of existence to take in reality into her soul. تَمَثَّلَ لَهَا. It was made to appear for her that Jibra'il was a good-looking man, for example, Basharan Sawiya. This is an important point to realize that the Islamic perspective is that the physical material world is one part of reality. It's not the only reality. And our soul can learn, can take in things from higher realms, not just from the physical lower world. In fact, all of these ahadith that talk badly about the dunya, of which there are a lot of them, they're saying this that to just focus on this material world and forget about the higher worlds, forget about God, forget about the hereafter, that's what's bad. That's what's disparaged in religion. Okay, so for example, in this hadith, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says that if the world held any value in the sight of God, even as much as a mosquito's wing, Allah would not allow a disbeliever or a wicked person to drink a single sip of water. We have other ahadith that praise the dunya. In the words of Imam Ali, the dunya is generally attacked very, very strongly. But we have one hadith, probably many, that from Imam Ali that praises the dunya. This is the explanation here that when the dunya is a means to achieve a higher cause, like a higher purpose, closeness to God, perfection in the other world, then the dunya is a good thing. But all these ahadith that talk bad about the dunya are when we somehow get distracted, as most people do, when we just live our life focused only on the physical, material, lower realm of existence. Okay. That's it for this first realm. If there's no questions, I'm gonna move on. Please, at any time, do feel free to ask or jump in. MashaAllah, we have a good crowd here today. The second realm is the realm of mithal, that I said, where there are bodies, where there are shapes, forms, colors, but it's no longer in this physical world. It's not like you can get into a plane or a rocket and, travel to the world of mithal. In fact, there's not just one world of mithal. There are different types of worlds of mithal, apparently. Different examples that if we think about it, we will find within ourself or within accounts of religion, accounts of mystics, of worlds where they were interacting, they were talking, there were bodies, there were shapes, there were forms, but it's not in the physical world. For example, your imagination. That's one example that if you just think about, close your eyes and imagine somebody's face or make something in your mind, if it has a shape, if it has form, if it has color, then that would be an example of an existence that is in the world of mithal. Dreams. Okay, one of the best examples, dreams are somehow in hadith we apparently have that God somehow gave human beings this dream so that they would believe in the hereafter. They would come to realize that it's not just the physical world, there is more than the physical world. So dreams are also something that are existing in the world of mithal. We're gonna come to some important like questions that might come into your mind that, is it really real? Aren't dreams just all fake? Isn't it just my mind that's, I don't know, I overate and so I'm seeing something funny at night? No, it's a reality. In the Islamic perspective, all dreams are a reality. They're all a reality, but there's further explanation there. In the notes, we did talk about this a little bit before the winter break, and even in the notes that I emailed you today, there is a discussion about dreams that all dreams are a reality, but that doesn't mean, what I said earlier about Bibi Maryam, that we can open our window to a world that's beyond us. Not everybody's dream is actually going out of the window and interacting with other external realities. A lot of times our dreams are just us within our own level of mithal, thoughts and ideas and emotions that I'm kind of afflicted with or busy with. That's what I'm seeing. But it's still a reality, the same way that this physical, material world that I'm in when I'm awake is a reality. Even that world of the dream when I'm asleep is also another kind of reality. Beyond that, mukashafat, like I just said about Bibi Maryam, the idea of mystical, spiritual disclosures, unveiling, these are also examples of things that would be in the world of mithal. And then the world of barzakh, that when we die, we will enter this world. Again, I think I told you guys a story of Naraqi and a dream that he had. He entered the world of barzakh while he was still alive, and then he came back. It's another world altogether. It doesn't, you can't travel there normally from this world, but it has its own bodies and shapes, and people can talk to one another in that world, and so on and so forth. So this is the idea of the alam al-mithal. One point here is that, in Islamic terminology, we have traditions that try to tell us that, in fact, the dunya is a dream. What does that mean? It's like because we normally think of dreams as being something insignificant, something temporary, something unclear, unimportant. And so, in the words of religion, the Ahlul Bayt, Allah are trying to tell us that no, in fact, there are some things in Alam e Mithal, like where we're going to go to after we die, that is even more real than this physical world. The pain, the pleasure that we would, enjoy in or suffer from in that world is going to be even much, much more stronger than the pain and pleasure that we get in the physical world. And so, that's the perspective here that these alam mithal, we shouldn't think that, oh, because dreams are short-lived, dreams are unclear, then all of alam mithal is unclear and the physical dunya is what's really clear and real. No, on the contrary, there are realms in the alam mithal, like the barzakh, the hereafter, which are more real than this material world. In this hadith from Imam Hussein, peace be upon him, he says exactly that the sweetness and the bitterness of this world is a dream. And the true awaking is in the hereafter. Somebody who is successful in that world is truly successful. Somebody who is wretched in that world, this is the idea that I said there's more perfection of God in these higher worlds. This world, because it's so low, it doesn't differentiate between a pious person and a sinful person. They both look like a healthy, normal human being. But in that other world, God's perfection is manifested more, and there will be a big difference between somebody who is pious and somebody who is sinful. Okay, the last level, I want to pause here. I've been talking a lot. Anybody have any questions, any comments? Anybody want to, even comments, if anybody has any, something that comes to your mind that this is related to, please feel free to share. Otherwise, inshallah, if there's nothing, the last level, nobody? Okay. The last level, the last world that we want to now kind of think about, and so I proved that we are at the alam mithal by our dreams. The first level, the dunya doesn't need any proof, right? All of us know that there is a physical material world. Although the skeptics, some people might deny that even, and we'll come to this. Okay, some people might say, no, how do we know anything is real? How do I know I exist? Maybe it's just like, maybe, I don't know if you guys have watched the movie The Matrix. Maybe we're all just in a matrix and we don't know that there's any reality out there. We'll come to that. But generally, the first level of dunya doesn't, for most people, it's a given that it exists. The second level, I try to say that we are there by our imagination, by our dreams. Now we want to come to the third level. The third level was that the alam aql, totally immaterial, no body, no shape, no form, no color, no size. Do we exist at that level? Let's let me give you some examples here. Think of an emotion. Maybe right now you're feeling something. You're feeling angry at somebody, you're feeling merciful, you're feeling in love, you're feeling happy. Okay, so think about this emotion. Is it a reality? Yeah, it's definitely a real. Again, we'll come to maybe some scientists might try to say no, it's just physical hormones and that's it. But for now, before we come to the response to that, just bear with me that okay, our emotion, we know that we have an emotion. I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling happy, I'm feeling hungry. So it's a reality. Now, what color is it? What shape is it? What size is it? It doesn't have a shape, it doesn't have a color, it doesn't have a size. And so that would be one example of how we have aspects of our existence. We have things within us that are true realities that exist, but they are not of a certain form. They do not belong to the alam mithal, rather they have to belong to another world beyond the alam mithal. More than that, what philosophers would normally talk about are knowledge. Okay, even in next week, like I said, we're going to talk in much more detail about properties of the material world and then compare that to our own soul and our own knowledge. Okay, so knowledge is something that also philosophers spend a lot of time talking about. They would say part of our knowledge are general concepts that, again, similarly to the emotions that we just mentioned, they don't have a shape or a size or a color. You think about the concept of a triangle that you know. Like we all learned this when we were a kid, that a triangle ha has the angles equal to 180 degrees. The three angles of a triangle, if we add them up, it will equal. So we have this concept of a triangle in our mind. What is the shape of that triangle, that concept of triangle? It can't have a shape. If it has a shape, then it wouldn't include other instances of triangles that have a different shape. If the concept of triangle in my mind is an equilateral triangle, then that means that other types of triangles, an isosceles triangle, would not be an instance of that general concept that I have in my mind. See, so this was a kind of proof that I'm trying to give to say that we have a general concept of a triangle which has no shape, no size, no form. It's just It's knowledge. Before I knew what a triangle was when I was 5 years old, my teacher told me triangle. I learned something new. There was some new reality that entered my knowledge, my soul, and that it was added to me. It was added to what I know. And it is a reality, but again, it doesn't belong to the alam mithal, nor obviously does it belong to the alam dunya. So it belongs to that third world that we said, where there are realities that are totally immaterial and have no body, no shape, no form, no color. Similarly, the idea of, for example, a human being. If the concept of a human being that I have in my mind is of a man, then that concept would not apply to a woman. If it's a concept that has a shape of like a tall person, then I can't say that a short person is a human being. No, I have a general concept of human being that can apply to a man and a woman and a tall person and a short person and this color and that color and so on and so forth. Okay, so these are all by looking within our soul, by thinking about ourselves, we come to realize that we have things within us that do not belong to the physical world. Some of them belong to another world which has shapes, forms, colors, but it's not physical, material world. And some of them, like these examples that we just looked at, are totally immaterial. They don't have any shape or any form or any color. Okay. So this was yeah, Sister Huda, go ahead. Bismillah, Sister Huda, you want to ask a question? You're muted. If you are able to unmute, then you can go ahead and ask. Okay, I think you're not able to unmute yourself, maybe. If you want to also put your question in the chat, Bismillah, you can go ahead. So I'll just kind of summarize. This was the first proof, also in the notes, Alhamdulillah, that if you guys go and read the notes, it goes through this again, same thing that I just said in a bit of detail. The idea is that when we have realized that we have things within us that are part of these other worlds, then that means that we ourselves also exist in these other worlds. Like that idea of a window, we have a window that opens to alam mithal and a window that opens to alam aql. So that means we are also at that level that we are in the alam mithal, alam aql. Whereas when I look at my physical body, clearly that's just in the level of the dunya. So I come to realize by thinking about this that I am something more than my physical body. Siroda, if you want to type out your question, you can go ahead. Okay, I want you guys to now think about this. There are other things that I had in mind also, but for now, there's one question here. Let me just mention another question as well. Okay, so there's one question here that I already posed. I want you guys to think about it. Give me a few minutes. It's become Fajr time a while ago over here in Qom, so I'll step aside and say my Fajr prayers and come back. Think about how we could respond to this. Okay, this one question is the question that's there on or the objection that is there on the slides in front of you that no, everything is physical. Why are we claiming that there's another world? It's just all the brain. It's just all neurons and stuff going off in our mind. And they might prove that. They say, look, when you're dreaming, we've connected people's brain to machines and wires, and we can tell that so much activity is happening in the brain. And therefore, there's no reality to a dream other than the activity of the brain. It's all a completely physical phenomenon. If you want, there's another question that also, if you guys, resolve the first question, then, yeah, another question would be like what I had said about the matrix, right? Like, how do we even know we are awake right now? How do we know we're not in some kind of dream and this world that we're in right now? It's kind of like the matrix, right? The world that we're in right now is nothing but a dream. Okay, that's another question. Another question, a third question, and I'll leave it at that. What if somebody, when they dream, they see themselves as being like a bird? Okay, and so then they have this question that who is the real me? Is the real me the human being when I'm awake? Or is the real me the bird that when I'm in the dream world, that's the real me? Do we have any kind of thoughts or answers? I'll leave you guys to think about this. I'm just going to read Sister Huda's question. I was a bit confused about the example about emotions versus the one about the triangle. Is it the idea that the first is a non-material prototype world and the second is of an... No, Sister Huda, both the emotions and the general concepts were ideas of alam aql. So not the prototype world. Both of them were examples of the third world that we had talked about, where we have a world of intellect or completely immaterial, where there's no form and no shape at all. Okay, so I've given you guys a few questions. Inshallah, I'll leave you to talk about them, think about them. If you have any thoughts, inshallah, I'll come back and hear from you guys in less than 10 minutes, inshallah.
Emotion.
Keep going. Yeah, sorry, assalamu alaikum. I'm back, everybody. But if you guys were in the middle of something, please continue.
More questions than answers.
Okay, let me look at the chat for now. Assuming this generation of dreams from the neural activity of the brain is accurate, first of all, humans know so little about brains. How does this activity define dreams' content, the people we see, the feelings we feel, the new settings we experience? Neural activity can signify a dream being had, but not what type or storyline of the dream. Therefore, cannot prove that dreams are material. Very good. Yeah, this is actually similar to maybe some of the points that I was gonna say. What about certain medicines that cause a person to hallucinate? Okay, good question. Have out-of-body experience, hypnosis. Our dreams are mostly about things we have perceived. What about babies when they smile and become sad in dreams? What do they see? Interesting. I didn't think about that. MashaAllah. Yeah, so anybody else want to share their comments or what you guys were talking about before I add my own points? Brother Shaheen, what were you saying when I came?
Sheikh, I was questioning about the matrix concept.
Hmm.
I often wonder
Hmm.
whether this is all just a figment of an imagination.
Right, right.
How do I prove that I exist? That there's a physical that anyone around me exists? Um,
Anybody
because
else?
even in a dream, I can
Mm.
like things move. I can feel things. I can have
Yeah,
motion.
yeah,
I can have see things happen. There's a me and there's other people.
mm,
There's a world even in a dream. So how is
right.
the reality any different? I can't come up with a solid proof myself.
Did anybody else have an answer to that? Sister Huda, you want to say something? Is your mic working now? Bismillah. I think we can hear something very faint. We can't hear properly. Yeah, we can't hear Sister Huda. The Akil Nasser has said one of the questions asked whether this world is real. We are told this world was created and will be destroyed. If this world won't exist afterwards, how can we call it real? Sister Huda, feel free to write it out, I guess, if your mic is not working. Okay, anybody else want to add anything or answer, give their thoughts, maybe? If not,
Check just
yeah.
quickly.
Go ahead, Brother Muhammad, yes.
I can't help but to ask that the purpose here we are here, or I'm here, is to essentially reach that stage before I die, maybe to experience that world. I don't know. Is that I know we have a purpose in this world,
Mm-hmm.
but one of the purposes is supposed to be that I gotta reach that level to say, you know what, I've accomplished something.
No, on the contrary, the Islamic spirituality doesn't give that much importance to being able to see things and experience things and feel things. What is important is following what Islam tells us, being a humble servant of Allah, praying, fasting. These are what's important.
Mm.
It's a reality that some people, and it may also differ from one person to another. Maybe two people, just because one person sees more dreams or experiences more, doesn't necessarily mean that their status in the eyes of Allah is higher. Okay, so this is sometimes even this is was not part of today's topic, but it's very related that even a mushrik who doesn't believe in God, they
Mm.
might be able to have a vision in that other world, and because they, put their body, some Hindu, for example, they carry out some extreme ascetic practices, they put their body through a lot of difficulty, they might see into the world of barzakh and actually see some reality there. So it doesn't mean that their status is higher than that Muslim who is not seeing anything but is obeying Allah. Because this is more just kind of a reality that there is a immaterial dimension to the soul. I was going to comment to Brother Shaheen that we know we exist. In this world, we exist in dreams. This is, mashallah, Sister Huda has got the answers. This is actually, Brother Shaheen, I was going to say this. Let me just finish reading what she's written. We know we exist. In this world, we exist. And whether this world is the dream or that, or the things we experience when we close our eyes is the real world, is a philosophical question beyond me. Doesn't the world exist because the Quran proves it? Um, the individual who asked this, that doesn't the world exist because the Quran proves it, we want to somehow, we're entering our discussion in Islamic beliefs here. We haven't yet, we can use tradition as Muslims, but we want to see if we can also prove things. These are our kind of foundational things that we will build our Islamic beliefs on. So we want to try to prove it with the intellect, even, not just tradition, not just the Quran. Anyways, Brother Shaheen, as Sister Huda kind of indicated, this goes back to a lot of things here are building blocks of reality and like our knowledge. It goes back to what we had discussed in epistemology, that there has to be something that we base our knowledge on, some things that I am certain about. And so, the idea of I can see something, it's in front of me, I know it's there. That's just something that I have to take as a given. It's like obvious, it's knowledge. And because I can see it, I can experience it, I can feel it, then it is reality. It's not something that I'm using my mind to think about, to prove, to give a logical argument. It's something that I just, because I see it, I know it's there. I perceive it. It's one of the, I'm forgetting the terminology we used, but in Arabic it would be like yaqiniyat or awlawiyat, or we had talked about in epistemology how we build our knowledge on certain foundations, and then those foundations have to be like, it has to stop somewhere. Otherwise, we don't have any knowledge. Everything is uncertain. Everything that goes to skepticism and sophism. So, in order to have an idea of reality, we have to stop at some things that either our intellect tells us is very obvious. We don't need to prove it. That, for example, the law of non-contradiction. That's something that the intellect just tells us has to be, or something that I can sense with my senses. Again, that's knowledge that I can start off with. I can be, yeah, self-evident. Ahsan, badihi. Thank you, Brother Zaid. So, with this in mind, as I think Sister Huda was saying, then both the dream world and the physical world are both real worlds. Both when I'm in my dream in alam mithal and when I'm awake, I can see something, I can perceive something, I can feel happiness and pain and pleasure. And in that, it is my soul that is really experiencing some reality. And so, some of those questions that I posed, we'll come to, in the slides, I'll show you a clear answer to this objection. But the other questions I posed, that are we in a matrix? Or Brother Shaheen was saying, we know that we're not, simply because we have certainty in what we sense. It's self-evident for us that when I see something, it is really there in front of me. And that's kind of one of my starting pieces of knowledge that I can go forward with. Otherwise, I can't do anything, right? Similarly, if I were to say that, okay, is the real me the bird that I see myself as in a dream, or is the real me the human being that I'm awake? This question is based on the idea that dreams are not real. Otherwise, based on the explanation I just gave, both of them are realities. And in fact, we could go further and say that the idea of you, me, is something greater, like alam aql, for example, is something greater that you're seeing in one place. You're in the form, that reality of you that is something even greater is being put in the form of a human body in the physical world when you're awake, and it's being put in the form of a bird when you're asleep in a dream. Otherwise, you realize that no, it's me, and there is this idea of me that is something beyond that, beyond both the bird in the dream and beyond the physical body when you are awake. Going back to this objection, though, on the slide, so the objection was that dreams are just generated by physical activity in the brain. The answer is a two-step answer here. One of them, I don't know if anybody mentioned this, but this is an important point that look, yeah, I think Sister Huda mentioned this. MashaAllah, Sister Huda, your comments were spot on. Um, just because the brain is active doesn't mean that that is the only reality. We could ask these people that is not the eye active when you see something? Normally, your eye is very much involved in the process of sight, isn't it? Obviously, it is. But these same atheists, secularists, materialists, people would say that the eye isn't seeing, it's the brain that's seeing. So in their mind, the eye is simply a tool that is being used to feed in the sight, vision, light, whatever you're looking at, to the brain. And so we would say, look, as believers, we have proof to show that it's something beyond the brain. The brain is also a very important tool. This answers maybe the question about hallucinations and drugs, and there is this deep connection between the soul and the physical body, where they affect one another. And for a lot of actions, the soul needs the body, for most people at least, who are not awliya of Allah, who have not reached a very powerful soul. Very powerful souls can act even without the body. But for most people, we act through the body, and so the body has an effect on the soul. The brain plays an important role in remembering, in thinking. You need the brain. But does that mean that, let's say you can't remember something? Maybe it's still there in your soul, but the process of recounting it and bringing it, expressing it again, that needs the physical brain. Although we'll talk maybe a little bit more about this next week, but the overall idea is that just because the brain is active when you're in a dream doesn't mean that the entire reality, it just means that there is some, correspondence that when the dream is happening, the brain also has a role to play. That doesn't mean the only reality is the brain. The next point is what I mentioned earlier, that, fundamentally we can ask these people that how do you know you exist in the real world when you're awake? How do you know that is a reality? That's a real world. And they would say that because it's obvious, it's sensed, it's observed, it's perceived. And so we would say that also the dream is perceived. And the same thing that makes the physical, material, awake world a real world is the same criteria that we can use to say that the dream world is a real world. Self-evident propositions, okay, as Brother Zain reminded us that we take all of our knowledge back to things that are self-evident. And both the reality of the dream and the reality of the awake world is self-evident. Okay, guys, I've gone past my time. I think we can leave it at that. I'll end. If anybody wants to stick around and ask any questions or share comments, I'm happy to stick around for a little bit. But inshallah, we can end. وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. Yeah, go ahead. Brother Zaman, you want to ask something? Say something? No? Okay. Yes, Sister Shiza.
Alaikum. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
So my question is just about the concept of abstract ideas or universals versus the particulars. How was it because I'm just vaguely familiar that it goes all the way back to Plato. this idea of forms? Like, how was that transformed or conversed with or dialogued by later Islamic philosophers? And how has that been conceptualized or perceived of in the Islamic philosophy?
I wouldn't know all the details here to answer your question properly, but overall, the Muslims translated during the time of the Imams, peace be upon them, like the Abbasid caliphs. At that time, the Muslims translated all of the knowledge. They tried to translate all of the knowledge of the world into Arabic. Medicine, astronomy, I don't know, other things, mathematics, geometry. Part of that was philosophy. And so, very soon in the history of Islam, Muslims started to delve into these subjects, and we had great scholars. Interesting point here, I'll tell you, is that we had people in the Muslim world who gave so much importance to philosophy and they weren't properly qualified to do philosophy, and they started to deny some of the fundamentals of Islam. And so that's why scholars of Islam took a very strong stance against philosophy. In the Sunni world, the Mu'tazilis, for example, the Mu'tazilis, they wanted to use their intellect and disregard hadith. And there's more details there. The Sunni hadith also, of course, have a lot of fabrications in them. But the overall point I'm making is that as Muslims started to delve into philosophy, initially maybe they weren't that good at it, but slowly they became more and more capable. And especially in the Shia world, deep aspects of reality, concepts of God and reality were explained by the Ahlul Bayt, peace be upon them. And so then there came to be a kind of beautiful harmony between tradition and the intellect, where philosophers were able to explain religion and give intellectual understanding to the deep words of the Ahlul Bayt and the Holy Quran. That's the general idea. Specifically, what you said about Plato, I'm sure that, there are Muslim philosophers that have their own ideas about these things. Some of them would accept what Plato said, some would have different. Plato apparently was different from Aristotle. And so, similarly, in the Muslim world, there are different schools of thought, and they developed philosophy, but also they have different ideas. And the specific thing you said about Platonic ideas, I think, also is something that's discussed in philosophy, and different opinions are there. Okay,
Thank you.
no problem. Okay, if there's nothing else, then we can leave it at that. Inshallah, everybody take care. Fi amanillah. Iltamas dua.